Hello, members. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. I hope that you're all keeping warm. I can already see somebody using the chat, letting us know they're dialing in this evening from an Arctic York in the UK. I'm slightly smug because I'm dialing in from a not so Arctic Rhône, and delighted. Sad that Marcel unfortunately can't join us this evening, our buyer for the Rhône. Delighted that I can step in, being not too far away at this current moment, and even more delighted that I get to spend the evening speaking with Nicolas Jaboulet, who is I'll do a proper introduction in a moment, but before that, I would just like to say cheers, Nicolas, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Yes, for members who've not met Nicolas before or who don't perhaps know too much about the Domaine and the négociant, all sorts of the business side, then you're in for a treat tonight. One of the serious winemakers and wine professionals of the Rhône Valley, and a specialist in the Northern Rhône, which I know that members are incredibly infatuated with, should we say, and that actually one of the wines we'll discuss this evening, the Society's exhibition Crozes-Hermitage, is one of, if not my favorite exhibition red wine that we produce at the Wine Society, or that you produce, I should say, Nicolas, that we sell. I probably shouldn't say that, that's a bit of bias, but so I'm particularly excited tonight, so thank you. Before we start and before I hand over to Nicolas, a few small pieces of housekeeping. You can use the chat, and I see already that many of you already are, so I thank you very, very much. Please let us know where you are and what you're drinking. Also, if you'd like to use the Q&A, please do. We have got some time for questions at the end, and I'm going to make sure that we get through as many as we can. So please do pop them in there, because we have the lovely Mahesh, as usual, behind the scenes, who's helping me out this evening. He will be, there he is. Hello, members. He's called Tastings Team. If you need to send him a message directly, please do so. But otherwise, make sure you click everyone on the chat. And other than that, I think I'm ready to get going. I'm excited to hear all about Domaine and Maison Les Alexandrins. I am all ears to hear about the Northern Rhône, which is such a magical part of the world for anyone who's not visited. And also, we are going to touch members. We're going to touch on another new project, which some of you, newer, that some of you may not be as familiar with. And Marcel has explicitly asked us to spend a little bit of time on, which is the delights of the Brezem, which we will talk about towards the end. So I'm going to hand over to Nicolas, who's got an incredible presentation for you. And thank you so much for spending the evening with us.
Cheers. Thank you. So to make the story short, I mean, because we have a half an hour to introduce Les Alexandrins, I would like to first, to come back on my background. I've been working in the wine business and in the Northern Rhône since now 20 years. My family has been involved in Terroir and in also the famous appellation of Northern Rhône since 6th generation. So Les Alexandrins is a new project for me. But in fact, I have a long background in this region. So we sold Paul Jaboulet in 2006, and I must say that I've been very often traveling in UK and conducting tasting for the Wine Society when I was having my Paul Jaboulet cap. But since 2009, we sold Jaboulet in 2006, and 2009 was the beginning of Les Alexandrins. So in fact, Les Alexandrins, it's a partnership that we have launched between the family Perrin, that you are also certainly very familiar with. They are famous producer of Château de Beaucastel in the south part of the Rhône Valley in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. They also own many properties in Gigondas, in Vaqueras, in Vin Sobre, and also they are the famous producer of Miraval Rosé and La Vieille Ferme. So Les Alexandrins is a partnership with the Perrin, but also originally with two other guys. One is called Guillaume Sorrel. Guillaume is a famous name also from Terroir, and his father and grandfather have been launching a very famous winery called Marcel Winery, famous in Hermitage. And Guillaume is now taking over this fantastic domain. And the last guy is Alexandre Cazot. Alexandre is also in the Rhône for many, many years. He's in charge of all the vineyards, and he has been working in the vineyards since 20 years. So he knows many, many growers from the region, which is great because thanks to his knowledge of the region as well, we have been increasing the size of the domain significantly over the last 10 years. So Maison and Domaine Les Alexandrins is located in Terroir. So basically, you have a very nice picture behind me. It's not the view of Tain, but it's really a big picture. Terroir, for those who have not traveled to Tain, Tain is located an hour south of Lyon, 100 kilometers south of Lyon. It's more or less the south of the Northern Rhône. When you speak about the Northern Rhône, it starts in Côte-Rôtie, Condrieu, and then it goes down to Cornas, and Terroir is not that far. So we are based in Terroir, which is really my heart, my village, I mean heart village, because it's where my grandparents were living and my parents also. So it's really an important village for me. Terroir is located on the bottom of the hill of the Hermitage slopes, and it's surrounding the Crozes-Hermitage. So here you have a map of on the left of the screen is the Northern Rhône, on the right is all the Rhône Valley, and we are in Terroir. So the Northern Rhône is very simple. I mean, you have the river, the Rhône River, going from the north to south, and the appellation of the Northern Rhône are located on both sides of the river, following the river. So on the right side of the river, you have mainly slopes with Côte-Rôtie, Condrieu, Saint-Joseph, Cornas, and Saint-Péret. And on the left bank of the river, we have the plain appellation of Crozes-Hermitage, so it's a flat area, and you have the slopes of Hermitage. You have to realize that the Northern Rhône, if you put all together the appellation of the Northern Rhône, it's more or less 3,000 hectares. And 3,000 hectares is more approximately the size of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So we are in the Northern Rhône speaking about very small appellation, tiny production, except Crozes-Hermitage, which become quite a big appellation. But all the other appellations, Côte-Rôtie, Condrieu, Cornas, Saint-Péret, and Hermitage, of course, are extremely small production of wine and quite confidential production. In red, you have the appellation Brezem. So, Anna, you mentioned about Brezem. Marcel, I spoke with Marcel today, and he told me, Nicolas, you must put emphasis on Brezem because that's something new, and maybe many people doesn't know about anything about Brezem. So Brezem, you see, it's a little south of the north, but it's more or less halfway between the north and the southern Rhône. The river, the line which is blue, which joins the river, the Rhône River, is called the Drôme. So the Brezem vineyards is south-facing. It's on slopes, and it's looking. It's on very steep slopes, like Hermitage slopes, like Côte-Rôtie. So it's very steep. The particularity of Brezem is that it's not an appellation. It's not a Côte-du-Rhône village, because Brezem is not a name of a village. Brezem is a name of a lieu-dit. And Brezem, you find Brezem on two villages, the village of Livron and the village of Alex. And those two villages produce Brezem. In total, in Brezem, it's 6 producers. So it's only 6 producers. And the total surface covering Brezem lieu-dit is 80 hectares. But on these 80 hectares, only half is planted right now. So we are speaking about 6 producers on 40 hectares. So Brezem is super small. It's very, very tiny, but extremely interesting. It's an historical vineyard. I mean, these vineyards has been planted for many, many, many years. And INAO, which is the Institute of Appellation, has really recognized the work and the quality of the Brezem in the mid 30s, 40s, so 70 years ago. And that's why they allowed the people from Brezem to put the name of the lieu-dit on the label, because normally you can't. You can't put a Côte du Rhône with the name of a lieu-dit. It's not allowed. So Brezem has this agreement from the INAO. And the other particularity of Brezem is that most of the grower has planted some Northern Rhône varietals on Brezem. So the red Brezem is produced with Syrah, and the white Brezem is produced mostly with Marsanne Roussanne and Viognier. Our domain is called Domaine de Brezem. So we purchased this domain 5 years ago, and this domain is as a name and the spelling of Brezem in the old time. So Brezem is using B-R-E-Z-E-M-E, and our domain is S-E-Y-M-E. So we using the old spelling of Brezem. It's really a wine. I mean, I love to introduce it. I love to show it because it's a terroir of limestone, which we don't really have limestone in the Northern Rhône. And it's a really different expression of Syrah. It's a very, very not light, but very delicate expression of Syrah, very, sometimes, I don't know what you say in English, but we say the way we describe the wine, we say that it's Pinot like a Pinotet from Burgundy, because it's very, very delicate, very aromatic, and the tannins are very soft and elegant. So this is red Brezem. The white Brezem is a super small production. I know that the Brezem white was on the en primeur offer, I think, the 2021 vintage, but we have a very tiny production of 4 barriques of Brezem white. So that's for Brezem. Otherwise, I mean, we have 24 hectares of vineyards, mostly planted on Crozes-Hermitage and Saint-Joseph. So that's really our 2 main AOC. On Saint-Joseph, we are having 4 hectares of vineyards, which are planted on the village of Tournon. So Tournon is one of the 3 historical villages of the appellation Saint-Joseph. So maybe the most well-known is Mauve, because it's where you have some famous producer, and then of course Jean-Louis Chave is over there, and Coursaudon and Gonon as well. So it's very, very prestigious name of the appellation. But Tournon is also one of the historical village, and it's opposite side of Terroir. And we have 4 hectares on this granite terroir. In elevation is approximately around 200 meters with a southeast orientation. So it means that it's a vineyard which benefits from the sun early morning until 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then the sun goes on the other side of the hill, and the vineyard has quite a rest. So it's a good orientation, especially with the new with the global warming, and it's nice sometimes for the vineyards to have a kind of rest during the day. So we are very happy with this Saint-Joseph. It's It's a very typical Saint-Joseph, very black olives, very deep. The granite terroir very often gives some minerality and tension. So it's not a wine which I will describe, which will be very, very generous, but it's a wine which is very vertical tasting. So it has a long finish and quite some deepness. Then we have Crozes-Hermitage. So Crozes-Hermitage is really the major appellation, major in terms of size of estate that we have. We have 10 hectares of Crozes-Hermitage, especially in the plain of Crozes-Hermitage. So Crozes-Hermitage is the only appellation from the northern Rhône which is on a flat area. So I mentioned that Brezem is limestone, Saint-Joseph is granite, Crozes-Hermitage is alluvion. So in Crozes-Hermitage, you will find the same style of terroir that you have on Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So those kind of galets, small galets, which has been rolled by the river, in fact, and they have the characteristic of they collect the heat from the sun during the day, and in the evening they reflect it. So it's a very, very warm terroir. Beautiful terroir give wines which are totally different, more generous, more intense in terms of aromatics, but of course less minerality and less acidity than a Saint-Joseph. So we have different Crozes-Hermitage in the range, and one of them is the Crozes-Hermitage that we do as a special selection with the society exhibition that we produce with Marcel, and that you will have for tasting a little later. We also have, a few parcels of Condrieu. We have one small parcel in Côte-Rôtie, which we are extremely happy, but it's not in production yet. It has been planted 3 years ago, so the new vintage will come. The first vintage will come in next 3-4 years from now. And we will have a new wine in the next 2-3 years, is Saint-Perret. So Saint-Perret is not a very well-known appellation as well. Saint-Perret, the particularity of Saint-Perret is that it's 100% white wine. But the name Saint-Perret is a contraction of Saint-Pierre of Ailly, like Ailly in Champagne. And it was in fact some monk coming from Champagne who come into Saint-Perret, and they introduced the method champenoise in Saint-Perret. So in Saint-Perret, you have white wine, still white wine, but you have also some sparkling white wine. You have a tradition of sparkling in Saint-Perret. So we will, I'm not sure we will do sparkling, but we will have a 5 hectares property, which is now planted and which will be in production in the next 3 years from now. And we have planted both grapes, Marsanne and Roussanne. We like them both. It depends really where they are planted and which orientation. Roussanne has more natural acidity, more fresher, and it's a good aromatic grapes. Marsanne has maybe more structure and more body. So it's the blend is always interesting to work with. And then to finish, we have also some Vin de Pays. And we have what we call the Cabanon, which is our easy drinking wine. Existing in white and red. And I know you have the Viognier, I think, in the Wine Society portfolio. So the Cabanon white is a pure Viognier coming mostly from Ardèche area, and also we have some Vin de Pays on the Brezem area, so we blend the Vin de Pays from Brezem and the Vin de Pays from Ardèche. But the idea is really to make a Vin de Pays very easy drinking, soft, a good wine to drink every day with aperitif. So that's really to introduce you the estate. So 24 hectares of vineyards, and we built a new cellar in Hermitage 5 years ago. So I think I put some picture of the cellar on the presentation. So as I say, it was important for me to be in Hermitage because my family has always been here. And of course, when we discuss it with Perrin, Guillaume is also, his cellar is based in Hermitage. So it's a place in the Northern Rhône. I mean, you have Ampuy, you have Tain, and then you have Châteauneuf-du-Pape. I mean, you have some villages like this, which are very important. So we have built a new cellar in a old building because, again, I mean, we had no real story. I mean, it's the first generation of the company, of the Domaine. And very often when you speak about Domaine, you speak about 2, 3, 4, sometimes I think it's 13th generation for Antinori. So it's fantastic. We don't have this chance. It's only a new winery, and being in Tain, in a whole building, it gives impressions that we have always been here. And really, when people visit us, I mean, it's great because they always try to say, I remember, I think I came, I mean, some years ago, but it's impossible. I mean, there were nothing before. So it's really great. We have this winery in Tain. Of course, it's not a big winery because it's nearly full now, but it's a very useful and a nice area. So we've made the choice. So it's not the right picture because you have some stainless steel, but and we have some concrete tank, and we really make the choice of concrete tank in the winery. It's only the 2 pictures, or you have one more picture of the winery? Yes. We did the choice of the concrete tank because for us, we believe that concrete is very nice also for aging wine. So I'm not speaking about, of course, the top quality of Saint-Joseph, of Cornas, but for many Crozes-Hermitage, you don't need a barrique. What you need is really a very nice fruit which really develop aromatics and of strawberry, of blackberry, and so on. But you don't really need to add barriques aging on this wine. And stainless steel sometimes is a bit too tough with the wine because it's very close, and even if you close the aromatic in the tank, sometimes you have this kind of metallic taste, and it's a bit more austere. With concrete, I remember the cellar of my grandparents were with concrete at that time. 80 years ago, and it's giving what we call in French. I have no idea how you translate, but a patine. A patine is a structure of tannins. And it's really interesting. Of course, we don't produce 100% of the cuvée in a concrete tank, but we split half. We half stay in concrete and half go into a wood tank, because we also have a big 80 hectoliters wood tank. So it's really the technical choice that we have done with Alex and Guillaume and the Perrin family is really to invest into this tank in this new cellar. So in this the volume of wine that we now produce is more or less 2,000 hectoliters. So it's a good size domain, but we still remain quite a small domain. We are not part of the big one. And it's really where I want to stay is we want to really upgrade the quality as much as we can with having new vineyards and new quality vineyards. It's very important, but it's where we tend to do. That's a beautiful picture. It's on my presentation.
Yeah.
I forget it. So, but it's good because you really see the northern Rhône as it's kind of corridor because the Rhône River is really compacted between two mountains. On one side you have the Alps, on the other side you have the Ardèche, and the Ardèche, which is the end of the Massif Central. And the northern Rhône, the river, is really in between those two mountains, and it's also where the Mistral wind starts. It starts in the northern Rhône and accelerate when you arrive in Montélimar, and really the Montélimar city is a barrier between a little more continental climate that you have in the northern Rhône and the Mediterranean climate that you have in the south. So it's nice to see this picture. What did I forget? I mean, of course, I mean, everybody knows that we only have 3 varietals in the northern Rhône. Only one red is a Syrah. So all the reds that we are producing are produced with Syrah. And really what is always amazing is to test the Crozes-Hermitage next to a Saint-Joseph to understand what is the difference between a Syrah on granite and Syrah on alluvion. It's 2 different tests, 2 different aromatics, but also 2 different palettes, and really the structure of tannins is different. And then we have 3 white varietal with Marsan and Roussanne that you find in Crozes-Hermitage, in Saint-Joseph, of course, also in Hermitage White, and we are really keen to blend those grapes because we believe that the blend is always better than single varietal. I mean, because they are complementary. And then we have the Viognier, which is used for our Condrieu parcel that we have on Lieu-dit-Lacaille, and also the Viognier that we are using in Ardèche for Cabanon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm sure members will agree. That was a really excellent overview. You have so many different projects and parcels, and you've explained everything really beautifully. So thank you so much, Nicolas.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I honestly can't think of anything that you've missed. Obviously, there's questions from members that we will cover, of course, but I thought I'd just pick up on one thing that I found particularly interesting before we move on to talking specifically about a couple of the wines. And that was that you have had quite an active role in replanting. So you've got a lot of new vineyards coming up, and you mentioned a couple of them that are in production at the moment. Are there any that you're particularly excited about?
They are all exciting, to be honest, because it's difficult to take one. I think Saint-Péray is exciting. Yeah. Saint-Péray is exciting for me because the parcels that we have, it's not small, it's 5 hectares, and it's a beautiful area with a wonderful view on all the river, and you really it's a great location, and I'm convinced that we will be able to produce good wines in Saint-Péray. Of course, the Côte-Rôtie parcel is fun because it's Côte-Rôtie, and it's even if it's a garden, it's 2,500 square meters. So it's really a garden Côte-Rôtie, but it's a nice garden, and it will be exciting as well to have our own Côte-Rôtie from estate. And then it's it's very, very difficult to buy vineyards in the northern Rhône. You have to imagine really the northern Rhône is the same as Burgundy. Everything is small. Everything has been split due to transmission to the next generation and things like that. It's tough to find, even in Crozes, 2 hectares to buy. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's 5,000 square meter, 8,000 square meter, and so on. So it's really the funny thing is really we started from scratch. And in 2009, we had no vineyards. We really started as a small négociant, and it's opportunities that allowed us to really to build this domain of 24 hectares. And so it's difficult to pick one. Brezem is great as well. Brezem is fantastic because you have no big names on Brezem. I mean, it's you have one famous name, but famous in the sommelier world, I would say, is Lombard. Lombard has been really producing Brezem for 40 years, maybe, and he was maybe nearly the only one. And then there are a few small who come up. And then Jean-Marie Lombard sold his domain in 2010 or 2011, I think. And at that time, we have been looking to buy it, but it was too early, and it was not the strategy. We wanted really to buy Crozes-Hermitage, and that was our strategy at that time. And then when the Domaine de Brezem came up, we say, okay, we have to do it, because Brezem it's a great opportunity. It's a fantastic area. So it's fun. I mean, it's how it is. I mean, I can't really pick up one. I mean, they are all exciting.
That was a cruel question. I'm sorry. But I think you did touch on what I was hoping we might talk about, which is something that many members may not know, which is that you started very much in the négoce model of not only not having the winery, which obviously now you have this beautiful winery, but you bought, lots of grapes to start with, right? So would you mind just spending a couple of minutes before we go on to the wine, which I'm desperate to do? Many members may not understand how that model works, particularly in France, I suppose.
Yeah, we started as a négociant of. In fact, we started as a négociant of bulk first. So, which means that we were sourcing barrique, buying one barrique of Côte Rôtie to a small grower, and buying a second barrique to another grower, and then buying 3 barriques to a third grower. And the idea was really to make our blend. So we were, of course, taking care of the aging of the wine, and we were doing our final blend, and to make sure that we were buying from, I don't know, in Hermitage, for instance, from the Greffieux area, and we wanted to buy a little piece of Méal and some of the Rocoul, and to make really a blend of what we thought was a great Hermitage, and very an Hermitage with respectful of the different terroir of the appellation. So it's really what we were doing at the beginning. And of course, the fact that we built the cellar allowed us to move the négoce of bulk to the négoce of grapes. And nowadays, I mean, we buy more and more grapes. Of course, we have our own grapes with the domain that we have, but we also purchase every year the equivalent of 60 hectares of grapes that we ferment and vinificate in our cellar. So it's a great job. I mean, sometimes I'm in négoce, and you're right, and it's nice to have a chance to mention it, because sometimes people see négoce as the people who buy a bottle and they put the label on the bottle and that's it. It's not the kind of négoce we are doing. The négoce we are doing is really, we are buying grapes. Sometimes we have some with the team of the estate. We are following in the vineyards the grower, and we help him to grow over the year. But we purchase the grapes. The grapes arrive in the cellar, and we do the vinification, we do the élevage, we do the blend, we do the bottling. So we really have how do you say? I mean, we really manage the wine as we want.
Yes, thank you. I think in other parts of the world it's so common for that to happen. That's how pretty much every South African winery has started, and
sure.
so common and yet doesn't get spoken about very often. I think probably with your team in particular, just the knowledge and the experience behind all of your team. No wonder the wines are so wonderful. You know, you have an eye for buying in the great grapes, or historically the great wine as well. And I didn't know that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Should we taste a wine?
Yes, you should. If you give me 2 minutes, because I forget the glass upstairs.
Of course.
So give me 2 seconds. I disappear. I come back.
Of course. And members, for the time being, I will get a slide up. We've got 2 slides explaining this wine this evening. So we're tasting the Society's exhibition Crozes-Hermitage. So we have this lovely description that Nicolas sent. I'm sure he won't mind me sending these slides to anybody who wants them afterwards. This is a lovely explanation of the production of the grapes, and I'll probably come back to that in just a moment. But this is the Wine Society page for the wine. I think Marcel really undersells this wine, is what I would say. It always trumps at tastings that we use it in. It's a staple, as I already mentioned, on my wine rack, that's for sure. But I think the nice thing about this wine is it is a classic Crozes-Hermitage for a really, really fantastic price. I've seen a few questions around the 2021 vintage. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the 2022 as well, because we do have time for questions. We've saved some time. But I will go back to the slide that Nicolas kindly prepared, which is about production, and I will let him talk about the wine. And this is when I do wish Marcel was here, because I'd love to ask Marcel why this wine, but I would quite like to know your answer to that, Nicolas. Why do you think Marcel chose this particular wine? You can brag to be our exhibition label.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I must say that it's every year. It's every year a great time that I spend with Marcel, tasting the different tank that we have. I mean, the concrete tank, the wood tank, and really trying to make the blend that correspond to the society exhibition. So it's really fun, because it's a fun exercise. Because sometimes, I mean, doing a blend is not always taking what you think is the best tank, because sometimes, I mean, you take 2 wines and they are both very good, but if you put them together, it doesn't fit. And you don't understand why, and it's the magic of the wine. I mean, sometimes 2 great wine doesn't match together, but sometimes, I mean, you have a wine with a good concentration, and then you think that you need to bring in this wine a kind of acidity, fresher, aromatic, and then you will pick up a tank which is much lighter but very aromatic, and you put them together, and then by magic, I mean, it goes very well. And it's really what we try to do with Marcel when we do this selection of Crozes-Hermitage is we have in mind, and Marcel especially have in mind, which kind of Crozes-Hermitage he wants really to bottle and to propose to the members. And from there, we start with the different tank, different cuvée, and we say, okay, if we put 50% of this one, 10% of that one, 20 of this one, and it goes. So very often in this cuvée, you have some vine which are roughly 20, 25 years old. So it's not very young. There is a part of young, but it's not a big part. But it's not the old as well. It's grapes which are really booming in terms of production. because it's 20 years. I mean, it's when the roots start to be quite deep, and in terms of production, I mean, it's pretty generous production. So the grapes are very fruity, aromatic, and so it's really this kind of grapes which goes into the cuvée. In terms of élevage, as I said, I mean, we have those big wood concrete tanks that you have seen on the picture, but also some wood tank. I mean, I'm sorry because I didn't put the new picture of the wood tank, but you have to imagine a same size of the concrete in wood. So it's 80 hectoliters. And the good thing is that in the wood, you have the micro-oxidation because of the wood. I mean, so the wine can breath in a way. And in the same time, because the quantity of juice is very high, and the surface of wood, the rate between the quantity and the surface is much more in favor of the quantity. So you don't add tannins of oak, you don't add aromatics of oak, but you really develop the fruit. And this cuvée is really a blend between those two ways of élevage. So right now you have the 21 vintage, I think, on sale, and we are already working on the 22, and I tested the 22 last week, not as a blend, but really as single tank, and really. 22 will be also very exciting. It's really funny because we the last two vintage 21, 22 are much more northern rhone style than the vintage 2018 and 19, which were much more Mediterranean style vintage. So we are back, and 20 was a bit in between, but with the 21 and 22. It's much lighter because in 21 we get a summer which was a bit cooler and more rainy. In 22, for some reason, I mean, it was very dry, but in the same time we have a stop of maturation, so we have a lighter degree in 22. So those two vintage are very northern Rhône style, and 21 personally I think is very, it's a wine which open up right away. It's very aromatic, fruity. It's easy drinking. And really, when Marcel does this blend, I mean, he think about a Crozes-Hermitage, not a Crozes that people will keep 10 years. Really, a Crozes-Hermitage that people will enjoy in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Absolutely. It's so it's got lovely fruit, that's for sure, but it has got that northern Rhône slightly floral perfume and that classic Syrah sort of slight pepper, but it's not, like you mentioned, it's none of the sort of earthy older aging northern Rhônes. This is a very happy northern Rhône that you want to have. I mean, I was just saying when you went up to get your glass, for me, I do drink a lot of this, but I find that it's a great wine for both winter and summer because it's actually got this friendliness that goes with barbecues and outside eating, and so it does everything.
Yeah, especially now more and more you chill a little bit the red wine, and it's a wine that really you can serve it at 16 degrees, it's perfect. And in winter, I mean, you serve it at 18. It's of course, I mean, it goes very well as well. So it's I agree with you. I mean, in summertime, it's a kind of wine with barbecue which goes very, very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can attest to that, members. I've tried it at all seasons and it works in all seasons. A lot of people are actually saying that the drinking window seems very short. I think it depends how you like your Syrah, I would say. Would you agree, Nicolas?
Yeah, it also depends on the wine. I mean, with the Crozes-Hermitage that we produce from the estate, or which goes into barrique for aging 18 months, has much more tannins and structure, and those wines will fit to age 10 or 12 years. But Crozes-Hermitage Wine Society, the idea of this Syrah is to make a very attractive Syrah for the first 4 or 5 years. And that's really the way we do the vinification, we do the élevage, and the selection of wine that we are making with Marcel, which makes this wine very approachable right away.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think we've got a great slide as well here that you've got a sort of nice description about how the Maison Les Alexandrins is vinified. And I think members will find that very interesting. Not all of your wines will be made in a similar style. So would you be able to just quickly for us compare this to, let's say, how you might vinify your Saint-Joseph, or what would be the differences, or perhaps your Terroir in the future?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you have to imagine that everything starts in the vineyards. So in Crozes-Hermitage, I mean, we vinificate between our domain and also the purchasing grapes. It's more or less 45 hectares of Crozes-Hermitage that we pick the grapes. So of course, I mean, we don't have the team to pick the grapes in few days. I mean, it takes few weeks to pick all the grapes, and they don't come to maturity at the same time. So sometimes you have to make. I mean, it's always a question of choice. I mean, when comes the harvest, you have to make choice, and you have to think about when your best parcel will be ready, and that you must be ready to pick the grapes for those parcels. And then you have to make some choice and say, okay, this one, I will pick the grapes maybe 1 or 2 days earlier, but we have no choice. I mean, we have to do it like this. And you need a tank, which will be, especially with the global warming, you need tank, which will be 12.5 or 13% of alcohol, to match with tanks that you will pick a bit later because you don't have time, or you have too many grapes to pick up, which will be at 14.5. And it's always a question of balance, and all the harvest is like this. Then you have the work in the cellar. So you have to decide in terms of concentration of wines that you have in tank. Sometimes after, let's say 2 weeks or 2 weeks and a half of maceration, you say, okay, this is the maximum you can get from the grapes, and you organize what we call décuvage. So you rack the barrique, you rack the tank, and you collect the juice, and then you do the press, the second wine. But some wines are so complex and so rich, intense, that instead of doing a 2 weeks and a half day of maceration, you go for 3 weeks and a half, and of course you will get more tannins, more extraction, and those wine will be more big enough to age for 18 months in barrique, for instance. So really the choice starts from the beginning.
Yeah, so you have to change with the fruit that you've harvested, right?
Yeah, and also that change vintage to vintage. I mean, it's of course I mean, wine, when you produce wine, you can't really have a recipe. I mean, you have to adjust your recipe every year because the wines, I mean, is never the same. It doesn't come to the rightness at the same time, and you always have to adapt yourself to the grapes and to the vintage.
Wonderful. Thank you for that answer. It's nice to hear somebody speak honestly as well, and say sometimes logistics is part of the answer. You know.
Sure. And it's very important because it's of course, I mean, we have 50 people. you have to harvest quite early now. That's something we didn't do in the, I mean, 20 years ago. I mean, people harvesting were starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. Today, with the global warming, sometimes it's more interesting to harvest at 6 o'clock in the morning when it's still a bit fresh, and finish the harvesting at 12, because after that, I mean, the grapes are already too warm. So it's a question.
Yeah. Thank you. There's been some debate on the chat that I've spotted about which year you started working with Marcel to produce the exhibition wine, and I can see it flicking through on the chat. How long have you been working with Marcel on the Crozes-Hermitage?
Honestly, I don't remember, but I would say at least maybe 2015.
Okay.
14.
Yeah, I thought it was about 10 years, so that's great. Yeah, 2014, 15.
Something like that.
Perfect. So I've got lots of member questions, so I'm going to hopefully get through quite a few, if it's all right with you, Nicolas.
Of course.
We have one question about the Brezem from earlier. Very interestingly, a member has asked, do you intend to try and get an AOC for Brezem? Or are there any other Côtes de Rhônes that you think are ripe for that sort of development?
It's not something that we will do alone, but it's true. I mean, we are 6 growers, and that's something we would like to see. But you know, with the AOC and with in France, I mean, the reglementation is always very tough, and Brezem is considered as a Côtes du Rhône. So the next step is Côtes du Rhône village, and then it can be an AOC. And every step take at least 10 or 15 years. So it's a question of time. Of course, what we would like, and that's really what we try to defend, is that having Brezem on the village is equal to a village. And that meaning that the next step from Brezem is AOC Brezem. That we would love to obtain, but it's discussion and discussion, and we will see. But of course, that's something we'd like to see.
And just to give members an idea, you know, for a wine that is without appellation, technically, I suppose, they're not cheap wines. The quality means that they sell for an elevated price. So I think you've got a good argument for stepping up the AOC ladder just there, don't you?
Yes, it's an argument, but it's not just a price. I mean, it's really when you come and see the vineyards, it's really steep. I mean, it's a huge work, and really for us, I mean, working in Brezem or working in Saint-Joseph or Cornas is exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So it's more the terroir, which for us we believe as a level of an AOC.
Wonderful. And members, I will share a link to that wine. I must admit it's something new to me, so I'm excited to try more of it in the future. I've got a very fun question. Well, I've got 2 questions I'm going to combine. Colin has asked if they were allowed, would more Northern Rhône wines other than Côte Rôtie benefit from Viognier? And Richard has also asked, can you mention what Viognier brings to the Rhône wines and where would you use it? So I think there's some good discussion around Viognier's role in the north.
So Viognier, I mean, to be honest, it's not my favorite test as really personal. Viognier is a very challenging grapes. It's challenging, for instance, on Condrieu because it's a grapes that you have to pick with just before maturity. If you pick at high maturity, then it becomes very heavy and very concentrate, and what is for me sometimes a bit too much. Mm-hmm. And I like to keep tension, to keep fresher in the Condrieu, for instance. So it's how I like Viognier. But Viognier is interesting also in Vampy and the Cabanon we are we are doing, I think, is a good wine. I mean, easy drinking wine and fun to have. Then we are also using the Viognier in the Cabernet Red as a blend with the Syrah. And it's always interesting because the Viognier, even if it's only 4 or 5%, bring a little aromatic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes, I mean, when you a chef prepare a meal and it just put a little piece of pepper and salt and or 1 or 2 other spice, and it change the dish. And the Viognier that you use in a red wine, it's like the peppers that you can use in cooking. So it's very small, but it's a lot in the same time. And the Viognier, the aromatic is so powerful, it brings really something special to the blend. But if you consider as the AOC, it's only allowed with the Côte Rôtie, and it's a blend of grapes. It's not a blend of wine. It's not a Syrah wine and a Viognier wine that you blend together, but it's really a Viognier and Syrah that you picked in the same time, and all the grapes goes into the tank for vinification. Mm-hmm. And it's even not a parcel of white and a parcel of red wine which are planted. It's really some whites which are planted in the rank of Syrah.
Yeah, it's such an unusual little strange wine rule, isn't it, to have a sort of field blend, but only in that one place. Thank you for that answer.
You're welcome.
We also have, I'll ask this quickly in case any members have to go, because we've had 3 members ask if they can come and visit.
Yes, of course. We are not officially open because when we did the work, we had to put an elevator and in the tasting room and things like that. So officially we are not open, but on meetings, on appointment, we do if we can, of course. I mean, if we are available and not traveling, we are not a big team. So I'm traveling as well, and my winemaker is traveling, and so if we are here, we will be happy to welcome you.
That's very generous. Thank you very much. Yes, I think after seeing the beautiful part of the world that you're based in, a lot of members are lusting after some travel. So thank you for that answer. Now, one quick final question. I think we've got time. We mentioned that the 2021 and 2022 vintages were both a more northern Rhône in style. Is there anything else that members should be looking towards, particularly in the northern Rhône, for 2022? It's that time of year where people are thinking about what to buy.
It's for 22. It's too early because for the white we are thinking about the first bottling of Crozes-Hermitage white, for instance, in May-June. So the wine are still under élevage, and the cellar is still cold. The cellar today is 12 degrees inside because we had some very warm days in February, but then it's cold again in France. So winter is never the best period to test wines because the fact that the wines are cold really doesn't make the aromatic very large, and so we always wait until the cellar get warmer to test again the wine. So 22 for me will be a very nice vintage to look at for both white and red. And honestly, the white has suffered a little more of the dryness because last year was extremely dry. And the Roussanne, for instance, really get concentrated, and we had no juice basically in the Roussanne. Marcel was better last year than the Roussanne. So the white are interesting, but very, very few quantity. The red wine, we are very, very surprising, for instance, because it was quite a a year with no rain. But in the same time, we expected a very early harvest because it was warm. And in fact, the maturity really stopped. And we have no tank in the cellar which are above 13.7 alcohol. So it's pretty and we have few tanks at 12.5. So it's really a lovely vintage because we have a lot of fruit. It's very delicate tannins, and I think in September, I mean, just before the harvest, we will start to do some blend, and it will be a very exciting vintage.
That was a wonderful answer, honestly. I think you've probably got members excited for the 21 and the 22, which both sound fantastic. Well, in the most professional of ways, you perfectly timed your answer as well. So thank you, Nicolas. I honestly can't thank you enough. I've really appreciated your honesty in this evening's session, and also the most fantastic introduction to the Northern Rhône. Lots of members in the chat were saying how wonderful that was and how much they learned. And I have to say, I scribbled down notes ferociously. There's actually some really great very interesting points, particularly about being a négociant, I found fascinating, but also about the different terroir that you're working with, which is amazing. So members, I do encourage you, go onto the website as well. There's some very interesting notes about each of the wines, and you can see the huge range that are produced by Les Alexandrins group. And I encourage you, yes, absolutely, to try more of their wines. We do have the Viognier that we've spoken about a couple of times, the fun Viognier, I liked that description. And we don't have it on sale at the moment, but I'll let members know when it's coming back on sale. And we obviously have the Crozes-Hermitage and the Bohème as well. So I'll send links around tomorrow, members. But for now, all I can say really is thank you to Mahesh behind the scenes. Thank you, members, to coming. But really, thank you to you, Nicolas, for the most wonderful evening. I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see you again soon, maybe here in the UK for a tasting.
Would love to. I've been very often, and really I would love to come back for tasting. You're doing a great job, and really you know, we have with Jaboulet before and Les Alexandrins now. I mean, the relationship with the wine society is very, very close, and we really appreciate all the work you're doing around the wine, generally speaking, and of course around our wine. So thank you very much.